It happened at a gas station near the naval base. A tired single dad in a worn jacket with a small seal patch was filling his truck when police officers approached. They laughed at his claim it was his. "You? A SEAL? Yeah, right." He didn't argue, just stood there as they cuffed him, while bystanders recorded. At the station, the mockery continued until a black car arrived and a vice admiral walked in. When he saw the man's forearm tattoo, everything changed. That unit was classified. Only 4 men made it home. What happened next stunned everyone watching. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story resonates with you, consider subscribing for more untold stories of quiet heroes among us. It started on a quiet Sunday morning at a gas station near the naval base. The October air carried the first real bite of autumn, sharp enough to redden cheeks and knuckles. Thorne Reese stood beside his weathered pickup truck, watching the numbers climb on the pump. His jacket, once navy blue but now faded to the color of distant horizons, hung loose on his frame. The small, worn patch on the sleeve caught the morning light. A trident, anchor, and eagle that any military town resident would recognize instantly. Thorne checked his watch. 6:45. Wren would be awake by now, probably already deep into her physics homework. The thought of his 14-year-old daughter, hunched over textbooks while other kids slept in, brought a slight softening to his otherwise impassive face. The pump clicked off. Thorne replaced the nozzle and screwed his gas cap back into place with practiced efficiency. Every movement economical, nothing wasted, the same way he did everything. Inside the station's mini-mart, he nodded to Eliana, the Sunday morning cashier, who knew him only as the quiet man who bought the same things every week. Black coffee, a copy of the Port Harmon Gazette, and exactly $12 of regular unleaded. "Cold one today, Mr. Reese," she said, sliding his change across the counter. "Winter's coming early," he replied, his voice low and even. Most people in town knew him only through such brief exchanges, polite, minimal, forgettable. Which is exactly how Thorne preferred it. The police cruiser pulled into the gas station as Thorne was getting back into his truck. He noticed it immediately, the subtle shift in his awareness, a reflex he'd never managed to deactivate. The cruiser parked at an angle that partially blocked his exit, not quite procedural. 2 officers stepped out, moving with the deliberate casualness that preceded confrontation. Thorne set his coffee in the cup holder and waited, keys in hand but engine off. Officer Prescott approached first, mid-30s, brunette, new to the force based on the pristine crease in her uniform pants. Her partner, Sergeant Lachlan, flanked slightly behind, older, heavier, with the hard eyes of someone who'd seen enough to expect the worst. "Morning, sir," Prescott said, one hand resting near her belt. "Could I see some ID, please?" Thorne reached slowly for his wallet. "Is there a problem, officer?" "Just need to verify some information," she said, taking his license. "Where are you coming from this morning?" "Home, heading back there now." Sergeant Lachlan stepped forward, eyes fixed on Thorne's jacket sleeve. "Sir, could you explain the patch you're wearing?" Thorne glanced down at the faded insignia, then back at the officers. "Navy SEAL Trident. And you're authorized to wear that, are you?" Lachlan's tone had shifted, skepticism hardening his words. "Yes." "You served as a SEAL?" Lachlan pressed. "Yes." The sergeant exchanged a look with his partner that Thorne recognized immediately, the look of someone who believed they'd caught a liar. "We've received complaints about stolen valor in the area," Prescott explained, studying Thorne's face. "People falsely claiming military service or decorations." "I understand," Thorne said simply. "So, you're claiming you were a Navy SEAL?" Lachlan asked again, emphasizing the question as though the very notion was absurd. Thorne met his gaze. "I don't claim anything, Sergeant. I was a SEAL." Lachlan's mouth twitched into something between a smile and a sneer. "Right, and I'm the Secretary of Defense." By now, a small cluster of onlookers had formed, Sunday morning customers, pausing between pump and payment to watch the confrontation unfold. Among them, a teenage boy held up his phone, camera aimed directly at Thorne. "Can I see your military ID, sir?" Prescott asked. "Don't carry it anymore." "Convenient," Lachlan muttered. Then, louder, "Sir, impersonating military personnel is a serious offense." "I'm not impersonating anyone." "Then you shouldn't have a problem proving your service." Thorne remained silent, his expression unchanged. Inside, calculations ran. Years of training balancing risks, contingencies, outcomes. The officers saw only his stillness, interpreting it as guilt or defiance. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step out of the vehicle," Lachlan said. Behind them, the small audience had grown. A young woman in Naval Academy, Sweats watched with narrowed eyes. An older man with a Vietnam veteran cap shook his head slowly. "Is that really necessary?" Thorne asked quietly. "It is if you're committing stolen valor," Lachlan replied, loud enough for the onlookers to hear. People died earning that trident, real heroes. Something flickered in Thorne's eyes then, a brief shadow that only the most observant might catch. Not anger, something deeper and more controlled. "I'm aware of that, Sergeant." "Then step out of the vehicle, sir." Thorne complied, movement smooth and precise despite the early morning stiffness in his right leg. The old injury always bothered him more in cold weather. "Hands where I can see them," Prescott directed. Again, Thorne complied. As the officers positioned him against the truck, the audience grew, phones appearing like fireflies at dusk, the entire scene illuminated in their electronic glow. "Sir, we're detaining you on suspicion of stolen valor and impersonating military personnel," Lachlan announced, producing handcuffs from his belt. "I need to be home by 9, Thorne said, his voice still calm. "My daughter." "Should have thought about that before you put on that patch," Lachlan replied, securing the cuffs around Thorne's wrists. Not roughly, but firmly, with the satisfaction of someone who believed justice was being served. As they led him toward the cruiser, Thorne's phone began to vibrate in his pocket. Wren's ringtone. The officers ignored it. At the cruiser door, Thorne paused, looking back at his truck. "My keys," he said. "Vehicle's not secure." Prescott retrieved the keys from the ignition. "We'll have it towed to impound." Thorne nodded once, then ducked his head to enter the cruiser. The last thing he saw before the door closed was the growing crowd of observers, their faces a mixture of contempt, curiosity, and, from a few, uncertainty. Inside the cruiser, Thorne stared straight ahead, his breathing slow and controlled. As they pulled away from the gas station, they passed the main entrance to Naval Station Port Harmon. The massive gray ships docked at the pier were visible in the distance, morning sun glinting off metal surfaces. Thorne's eyes tracked the base as they passed, a muscle in his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. Then he began to count silently, an old calming technique. Not because he was afraid, but because certain habits never quite leave a man, even years after they're no longer necessary. The Port Harmon police station occupied an unremarkable 2-story brick building downtown, just past the commercial fishing docks and the row of tourist shops that came alive during summer months. In October, the town quieted, returning to its true residents, military families, fishing crews, and those who served them both. Inside, the station hummed with Sunday morning routine. Skeleton crew, coffee pot, half empty. Overnight reports being filed. Officers glanced up as Lachlan and Prescott led Thorne through to processing. A stolen valor case wasn't common, especially not involving someone claiming to be a SEAL. Chief Magnolia Rain emerged from her office at the commotion, coffee mug in hand. At 48, she carried herself with the weary competence of someone who'd earned her position through persistence rather than politics. Her silver-streaked black hair was pulled back in a practical knot. "What have we got?" she asked, assessing Thorne with a practiced eye. "Stolen valor, Chief," Lachlan reported with satisfaction. "Caught him wearing a SEAL trident at the Harbor gas station. Claims he earned it." Chief Rain studied Thorne's face. Unlike her officers, she didn't immediately see guilt or deception. She saw stillness, the kind that came from discipline rather than fear. "Your name, sir?" she asked. "Thorne Reese." "Local?" "Yes, 457 Mariners Way." "Occupation?" "Dock worker at Pelican Harbor, mechanic at Mackenzie's garage." Rain nodded. "2 jobs." "3. Weekend shifts at Harbor Gas." The chief raised an eyebrow. "And when exactly were you a Navy SEAL between all these shifts, Mr. Reese?" For the first time, Thorne's expression shifted. A slight softening around the eyes, not quite amusement, but recognition of the question's intent. "Before Port Harmon," he replied simply. "Process him," Rain instructed her officers. "I want confirmation on his identity and a check for any military records." As they led Thorne toward booking, Rain called after them. and get those cuffs off if he's cooperative. Booking proceeded with mechanical efficiency. Fingerprints, photographs, personal belongings cataloged and stored. Wallet, keys, phone, still showing 3 missed calls from Wren. A small notebook with densely written numbers and the contents of his pockets. A folded receipt, 2 quarters, and a worn brass coin that Officer Prescott turned over in her palm. "Challenge coin?" she asked, studying the faded insignia. Thorne nodded once. She added it to the property envelope without further comment, but her expression had changed slightly. Challenge coins weren't the sort of thing imposters typically carried. They were too specific, too personal to military units. "You get 1 phone call," she told him, handing him the station phone. Thorne dialed from memory, not a number stored in his cell phone. When someone answered, he spoke only 5 words. "Tidewater, glass house, checkmate." Then he hung up. Officer Prescott stared at him. "That's it? No lawyer, no family?" "Won't be necessary," Thorne replied, his voice betraying nothing. Prescott led him to a holding cell. Not quite an arrest, but detention while they investigated. As the cell door closed, she noticed something odd about Thorne's posture. He stood perfectly centered in the small space, weight evenly distributed, hands relaxed at his sides. Not the anxious pacing or defeated slouch typical of detainees, but the balanced readiness of someone who'd stood at attention for years. "Usually the fakes can't stop talking about their classified missions," she observed, testing him. Thorne said nothing, his silence neither confirmation nor denial. Unsettled, Prescott returned to her desk, where Sergeant Lachlan was already filling out paperwork with evident satisfaction. "Guy's obviously a fraud," Lachlan said without looking up. "Probably bought that patch online. You see his hands? Working man's hands. No way that guy was special forces." Prescott frowned, remembering the peculiar calluses on Thorne's palms, not quite matching typical labor patterns. "I'm running his prints now. Should tell us if he has military records." "Waste of time," Lachlan snorted. "But go ahead. These stolen valor types make me sick. My brother-in-law did 2 tours in Afghanistan. Real service. Real sacrifice." In the background, Chief Rain overheard their conversation, her expression thoughtful. "Let's not jump to conclusions before we have the facts, Sergeant." The gas station footage had already begun its viral journey across social media. First on local Port Harmon groups, then radiating outward as algorithms detected its emotional payload. "Stolen Valor Arrest, Fake Seal Busted," read one headline. The comments section filled rapidly. "Look at this guy trying to play hero with that patch. Disgraceful. My son's a SEAL. This guy doesn't have the look. Too old, too thin. Police doing their job. Thank you for protecting real veterans' honor." But among the outrage, other comments appeared. "Watch his movements when they approach. That's military bearing. Notice he doesn't resist or argue. Unusual for fakes who typically want attention. Those eyes don't look right for a fraud. Too calm." Back at the station, Officer Prescott stared at her computer screen, confusion creasing her brow. The fingerprint search had returned unusual results. Thorne Reese existed in civilian databases, with a driver's license, tax records, property deed. But when she tried to access military records, she hit a wall of redactions. The screen displayed only Reese, Thorne, A, Service, U.S. Navy, redacted status, redacted clearance, Umbra, 9. "Chief," she called, "you need to see this." Rain came over, coffee mug still in hand, and leaned in to view the screen. "What am I looking at?" "His military record, or what I can access of it." Prescott pointed to the screen. "Most of it's redacted. And what's Umbra 9 clearance? I've never even heard of that." Before the chief could respond, the front desk officer appeared at the doorway, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Chief Rain, there's a call for you. Line 3. "Who is it?" The desk officer swallowed visibly. "Wouldn't give a name. Just said he was calling about our unauthorized detention of naval intelligence asset Tidewater." Rain and Prescott exchanged glances. Tidewater, the first word Thorne had said in his cryptic phone call. In the holding cell, Thorne sat on the bench, back straight, eyes forward. He hadn't asked for water, food, or bathroom breaks in the 2 hours since his detention began. Hadn't complained about the handcuffs, which had left faint marks on his wrists. Hadn't demanded a lawyer or threatened lawsuits. His stillness was becoming increasingly unnerving to the officers who passed by. "He hasn't moved in an hour," Prescott whispered to Lachlan. "Not even to check the time." "Probably rehearsing his story," Lachlan replied, but his earlier confidence had diminished somewhat. The front doors of the station swung open with force, admitting a teenage girl with fierce eyes and Thorne's jawline. Ren Reese marched directly to the front desk, radiating controlled fury. "My father was detained this morning," she announced. "Thorne Reese, I want to see him." The desk officer looked uncertain. "Miss, I can't just... He was supposed to pick me up at 9. It's almost 11, and he's never late. Then I see a video online of him being arrested for supposedly lying about military service." Her voice rose slightly. "My father doesn't lie." Chief Rain emerged from her office, having overheard. "I'm Chief Rain, and you are?" "Ren Reese. I need to see my dad." Rain gestured toward a nearby chair. "Have a seat, Ren. We're still processing your father's case." "What case?" Ren demanded, remaining standing. "He was getting gas. Since when is that a crime?" "Your father was wearing a Navy SEAL insignia," Rain explained calmly. When questioned, he claimed to have earned it through service. So we need to verify that claim. Impersonating military personnel. "My dad works 3 jobs," Ren interrupted, her voice tight with emotion. "He doesn't talk about himself. Ever. He doesn't need to prove anything to anyone." Rain studied the girl's face, the absolute conviction there. "Honey, men who pretend to be special forces." "My dad doesn't pretend to be anything," Ren cut her off. "That's the point. He never talks about what he did or where he served. Never wears it like some badge. Just that one patch on his old jacket." The chief's expression softened slightly. "Why that patch then? Why wear it at all if he never talks about it?" Ren hesitated, vulnerability briefly replacing anger. He said, "It reminds him of promises he made to people who can't collect on them anymore." The girl's words hung in the air, carrying more weight than she perhaps realized. Chief Rain's phone rang again, breaking the moment. "Wait here," she told Ren, returning to her office. As the chief disappeared, Officer Prescott approached Ren, curiosity overcoming protocol. "Your dad, has he ever mentioned where he served? Any stories about his time in the Navy?" Ren shook her head. "No, he doesn't talk about it. Never? Not even about where he trained or..." "The only thing I know," Ren said carefully, "is that sometimes he wakes up at night, and sometimes when there are fireworks on the 4th, we have to leave early." Her eyes challenged the officer. "Does that sound like someone who's pretending?" Prescott had no answer. In Chief Rain's office, the phone call was brief but consequential. "This is Chief Magnolia Rain, Port Harmon Police." "Chief Rain, this is Vice Admiral James Hargrove, United States Navy." The voice carried the unmistakable gravity of high command. "I understand you're holding one of my men." Rain straightened instinctively. "Sir, we have a Mr. Thorne Reese in custody regarding a stolen valor complaint." A pause. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. Hold him until I arrive." "Yes, sir. May I ask..." But the line had already gone dead. Rain emerged from her office to find Prescott waiting anxiously. "Chief, I've been digging deeper into Reese's background. It's strange. He exists in all the right databases, has all the right paperwork, but there's almost nothing before 12 years ago when he moved to Port Harmon. It's like he appeared out of nowhere with a perfect civilian identity." "Or was given one," Rain murmured. "Officer Prescott, we're about to have a visitor. Vice Admiral Hargrove is coming to our station regarding Mr. Reese." Prescott's eyes widened. "A Vice Admiral for a stolen valor case?" "Exactly." Rain glanced toward the holding cells. "Which makes me think this isn't a stolen valor case at all." The station's usual Sunday quiet had given way to an atmosphere of tense anticipation. Officers found reasons to linger near the front desk. Sergeant Lachlan, informed of the Admiral's impending arrival, paced nervously, his earlier certainty crumbling. "Maybe we should have verified his service before bringing him in," he muttered to Prescott, who merely gave him a pointed look. Ren remained in the waiting area, alternating between texting furiously on her phone and glaring at any officer who made eye contact. When shown the viral video of her father's detention, she'd become even more agitated. "You posted this online, before even knowing if he did anything wrong?" No one had a good answer for that either. At exactly 11:47 a.m., a black SUV with government plates pulled into the station parking lot. Security cameras captured its arrival, the precise parking job, the military precision with which two figures emerged. Vice Admiral James Hargrove, distinguished in full-dress uniform, his chest heavy with decorations that spoke of decades of service. Beside him, a younger naval officer carrying a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. The station fell silent as they entered, every eye drawn to the Admiral's imposing presence. He moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to command, scanning the room with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Chief Rain stepped forward. "Admiral Hargrove, I'm Chief Rain." The Admiral nodded once. "I understand you're holding one of my men." "Yes, sir." "Thorn Reese, detained on suspicion of stolen valor." She kept her voice neutral. "He was wearing a Navy SEAL Trident patch and claimed to have earned it." "I'd like to see him." The Admiral's tone left no room for argument. As they walked toward the holding cells, the Admiral noticed Wren. He paused, studying her face with unexpected softness. "You're Reese's daughter." Not a question. Wren nodded, surprise briefly overcoming her anger. "Sir, do you know my father?" A complex emotion crossed the Admiral's weathered face. "I knew men like your father." Before she could ask more, he continued toward the cells, his aide following silently. When they reached Thorne's cell, Officer Prescott unlocked the door. The Admiral entered alone, waving off the others. "Give us the room." The door closed behind him, leaving the Admiral and Thorne face to face. Through the small window, officers could see Thorne stand automatically at attention, his posture transforming instantly. The two men stared at each other in complete silence, an unspoken recognition passing between them. After a long moment, the Admiral spoke, his voice too low for those outside to hear. "Show me your left forearm, son." Thorne rolled up his sleeve, revealing a small, strange tattoo partially obscured by a surgical scar. An intricate design, incorporating a trident, a phantom skull, and numbers in a pattern only a few would recognize. The Admiral's composure faltered for the first time. "Where did you get that marking?" "Coronado," Thorne replied steadily. "Class 202, Phantom Unit." The Admiral's voice, when it came, carried an emotion none of his subordinates had likely ever heard. That unit was classified beyond top secret. Only 4 men made it home. Thorne met his gaze unflinchingly. "I was the 5th. Outside the cell, Chief Rain watched the exchange through the window, unable to hear the words, but seeing clearly the recognition in both men's faces, the sudden shift in the Admiral's demeanor from authoritative to something approaching reverence. When the Admiral emerged from the cell, his expression was controlled once more, but his eyes burned with an intensity that made even the most veteran officers step back. "Chief Rain, I need to speak with you privately. Have the handcuffs removed from Chief Petty Officer Reese immediately." As they walked to Rain's office, the Admiral turned to his aide. "Contact the base. I want the Phantom Protocol initiated." The aide nodded sharply, already moving away, his fingers working the combination lock on his briefcase. Inside Rain's office, the Admiral closed the door and stood with military straightness despite his age. "What I'm about to tell you is classified, Chief Rain. I need your word. It stays in this room." "You have it, sir." The Admiral nodded, satisfied. "The man you're holding is Chief Petty Officer Thorn Reese, formerly of Naval Special Warfare Development Group." Rain's eyebrows rose. "DevGru? That's SEAL Team 6, yes." But Chief Reese's actual assignment went deeper. He served in Phantom Unit, a program so classified that most admirals don't know it exists. The Admiral's voice carried the weight of decades of secrets. "The operations he conducted saved thousands of lives but can never be acknowledged. The men he buried remain unnamed in Arlington." "If he's who you say he is," Rain asked carefully, "why didn't he just identify himself? Show credentials?" "Because men like Chief Reese are trained to reveal nothing, even under duress, especially under duress." The Admiral's jaw tightened. "And because the patch your officers mocked him for? It's the only thing he has left of his team. The only public acknowledgement they ever received." Outside in the main station, something unprecedented was happening. The Admiral's aide had returned, opening his briefcase to reveal a classified file with redacted stamps across it. He showed Officer Prescott a single photograph. A team of warriors in combat gear, faces deliberately blurred, except one, a younger Thorne. standing with quiet dignity among his teammates. "This is the only official photograph where his face wasn't obscured," the aide explained quietly. "Everything else about Phantom Unit remains classified at the highest levels." Prescott stared at the image, understanding dawning. "We made a terrible mistake." "No." The aide's voice was surprisingly gentle. "You couldn't have known. That was the point. Men like Chief Reese were ghosts. Their greatest service is the one their country can never acknowledge." In the holding area, Wren watched as the officers' attitudes transformed from suspicion to something approaching awe. The whispers had begun. Fragments about her father that painted a picture so at odds with the quiet man who helped her with physics homework and fixed the neighbor's lawnmower for free. When the Admiral emerged from Rain's office, he approached Wren directly. "Your father is a remarkable man, Miss Reese. One of the finest warriors I've ever known." Wren swallowed hard. "Is he in trouble?" "No." A faint smile crossed the Admiral's face. "Quite the opposite." The holding cell door opened, and Thorne stepped out, free of handcuffs. His eyes immediately found his daughter, a silent communication passing between them. Wren ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist with uncharacteristic emotion. Thorne's hand came up to rest on her head, the only outward sign of his relief. The Admiral watched the reunion with approval, then stepped forward. The entire station fell silent as he raised his hand in a formal salute. "On behalf of the United States Navy, I apologize for this indignity, Chief." Thorne returned the salute precisely, muscle memory from years of service. "They were doing their job, sir. They didn't know." "That's the point, son. Your greatest service is the one your country can never acknowledge." Outside the station, word had spread with the viral speed unique to small towns. A crowd had gathered, journalists alerted by police scanners, military personnel from the nearby base, curious locals drawn by rumors of a SEAL in their midst. As Thorne emerged beside the Admiral, phones captured the moment. The distinguished officer performed a formal salute to the same man who was mocked and handcuffed hours earlier. Sergeant Lachlan and Officer Prescott watched from the station steps, their expressions a mixture of shame and awe. "The thing about real heroes," the Admiral said, loud enough for the nearest phones to catch, "is they never need to tell you they're heroes." The footage began uploading immediately, a digital counterpoint to the morning's humiliation. This time, the comments took a different tone. "Look at the Admiral saluting him. Who is this guy?" "The quiet ones, always the quiet ones. That look in his eyes, I've seen it before. Man's seen things we can't imagine." As the crowd pressed closer, seeking statements, explanations, Thorne remained silent, his expression revealing nothing. But something had changed, a subtle shift in how he carried himself, as though a long-held burden had altered its weight. The Admiral placed a hand on Thorne's shoulder. "My car is waiting, Chief. There's something at the base you need to see." Thorne glanced at Wren, who nodded her understanding. "I'll meet you at home, Dad." As Thorne walked toward the Admiral's waiting SUV, the morning sun caught the faded patch on his jacket sleeve, the trident that had started it all now visible for what it truly was, not a claim to glory, but a promise kept to those who couldn't come home. The SUV pulled away from the curb, leaving behind a station full of officers reconsidering their assumptions, and a town beginning to see one of their own in an entirely new light. Have you ever noticed the quiet strength in someone that others overlooked? The world is full of unseen heroes who never seek recognition for their greatest acts of courage. Share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to hear more stories of extraordinary people hiding in plain sight. The black SUV moved through Port Harmon's quiet Sunday streets with purposeful efficiency, drawing curious glances from pedestrians who noticed the government plates and military bearing of the driver. Inside, Thorne sat perfectly still in the back seat across from Vice Admiral Hargrove, both men observing the unspoken protocol of those accustomed to classified conversations. The aide in the front passenger seat kept his eyes forward, trained not to hear what wasn't meant for him. 12 years, the Admiral finally said, breaking the silence. "You've been off the grid for 12 years. Thorne's gaze remained steady. "Not off the grid, sir, just on a different one. 3 civilian jobs, a modest house, single parenting." The Admiral studied him with undisguised curiosity. "After what you did, you could have written your own ticket anywhere in the private sector. Security firms would have paid millions for your expertise. Not interested in selling what wasn't entirely mine to give, sir. The Admiral nodded slowly, understanding the deeper meaning. The training, the classified techniques, the knowledge that came at the cost of other men's lives. None of it was simply a career skill to be marketed. Your daughter, the Admiral said. She doesn't know, does she? No. Her mother? A subtle tightening around Thorne's eyes, the equivalent of a flinch for a man trained to reveal nothing. Layla died when Ren was 4. Cancer. The Admiral absorbed this, adding another piece to the puzzle of Thorne's self-imposed exile from his former life. I'm sorry. Thorne acknowledged this with the barest nod. As the SUV approached the security checkpoint at Naval Station Port Harmon, Thorne's gaze shifted to the massive gray vessels docked at the piers. His eyes tracked movement patterns, security positions, threat assessments, involuntary habits that never quite fade. The Franklin is in port, he observed quietly, identifying the aircraft carrier without having to read its designation. The Admiral raised an eyebrow. Good eye. She arrived yesterday. The guard at the checkpoint snapped to attention when he recognized the Admiral, waving the SUV through with minimal formality. As they progressed deeper into the base, Thorne registered the changes since he'd last been on a naval installation. New security protocols, updated equipment, younger faces. They parked outside a nondescript administrative building, deliberately unremarkable among the base's more imposing structures. The kind of place where decisions were made that never appeared in press releases. This way, the Admiral directed, leading Thorne through a side entrance that required biometric scanning. The aide remained with the vehicle. Inside, they descended a flight of stairs to a secure conference room, where 3 naval officers in service khakis waited, standing automatically when the Admiral entered. Their eyes moved to Thorne with barely concealed curiosity, his civilian clothes and weathered appearance at odds with the Admiral's evident respect. Gentlemen, the Admiral said, this is Chief Petty Officer Thorne Reese, Phantom Unit, Class 202. The reaction was immediate and revealing. One officer physically stepped back. Another's hand moved instinctively to the scar visible above his collar. The third, a woman with commander's insignia, simply nodded with the understanding of someone who'd read files others weren't permitted to see. I thought all Phantom operators were dead, the first officer said, recovering his composure. That was the official assessment, the Admiral replied. He turned to Thorne. These officers have Umbra 7 clearance. They know the outline, not the details. Thorne acknowledged this with characteristic economy. Understood. The reason I brought you here, the Admiral continued, is on this server. He gestured to a secure terminal in the corner of the room. 2 days ago, we intercepted communications using a recognition pattern associated with Phantom Unit. Your recognition pattern, specifically. For the first time since his detention began, genuine surprise registered in Thorne's expression. A slight widening of the eyes, a barely perceptible shift in his breathing pattern. That's not possible, he said. Those codes were buried with the program. And yet, the Admiral replied, here they are. He nodded to the female commander, who activated the terminal and stepped aside. Thorne moved to the screen, scanning the data with practiced efficiency. To the others, it appeared to be meaningless strings of numbers and symbols. To him, it was a language he'd helped create, a ghost from a past he'd believed safely entombed. This is authentic, he confirmed, voice flat, but modified, the original architecture with new permutations. Can you trace it? The Admiral asked. Thorne's fingers moved across the keyboard, muscle memory overriding the years of disuse. The officers watched in silence as code filled the screen, Thorne navigating security protocols with the fluid expertise of someone who helped design them. After several minutes, he straightened. The signal originated from Severomorsk. The officers exchanged glances. Northern Fleet Headquarters, one murmured. Not just that, Thorne added. It's coming from a specific terminal associated with Department K, Russian Naval Intelligence. The sender knows exactly who would recognize this pattern. It's bait, the Admiral concluded. Yes, but for whom? Thorne turned to face him. Everyone who could recognize this code is supposed to be dead, except me. The implication hung in the air, unspoken but understood by all present. Someone knew Thorne was alive. Someone with access to highly classified information, was sending a message only he could understand. Could it be a former handler? The female commander asked. Someone from command structure? Thorne shook his head. Handlers never had access to the complete recognition patterns. It was compartmentalized specifically to prevent compromise. Then it's one of your team, the Admiral said quietly. Someone else survived. Back at the Port Harmon police station, the aftershocks of the morning's events continued to ripple outward. Chief Rain had ordered all officers into the conference room for an emergency briefing, her expression grimmer than anyone could recall seeing. What happened this morning was a catastrophic failure of procedure and judgment. She began without preamble. We detained and publicly humiliated a decorated veteran based on assumptions and bias rather than facts. Sergeant Lachlan stared at his hands, unable to meet her gaze. Worse, Rain continued, we compromised operational security around an individual who, for reasons we are not privy to, has maintained a deliberately low profile in our community for over a decade. Chief, Officer Prescott ventured, exactly who is Thorne Reese? Rain measured her response carefully. Most of that information remains classified. What I can tell you is that he served in a highly specialized unit, conducting operations at a level of secrecy beyond what most of us can comprehend. The Admiral made it very clear that Mr. Reese's service record contains acts of extraordinary courage that will never appear in any history book. And we arrested him for stolen valor, Lachlan muttered, the full weight of the morning's mistake settling over him. Yes, we did. Rain's voice hardened. Based on what, Sergeant? His appearance? The fact that he didn't fit your mental image of what a special operator should look like? Lachlan had no answer. Effective immediately, I'm implementing new protocols for handling stolen valor complaints. Rain passed out folders to each officer. No more detentions without verification. Through proper channels. No more public confrontations that can be filmed and uploaded before facts are established. As the briefing continued, Officer Prescott's attention drifted to her computer, where the gas station footage had already accumulated over 50,000 views. But now, a new video was trending. Shaky phone footage of the Admiral saluting Thorne outside the station. The comments section had become a battlefield between those demanding answers and those expressing outrage at how Thorne had been treated. Among them, one comment caught her attention. Phantom Unit wasn't just classified, it was a myth. If this guy was really Phantom, something big is happening. She quickly closed the browser as Chief Rain approached. Prescott, I need you to handle something delicate. Mr. Reese's daughter is still in the waiting area. She's understandably upset and confused. What should I tell her? Nothing classified. Just make sure she's okay and offer her a ride home if needed. The Admiral indicated Mr. Reese might be at the base for some time. Prescott found Wren exactly where they'd left her, scrolling through her phone with intense focus. The teenager looked up, wariness immediately replacing whatever emotion had preceded it. Your father is still with Admiral Hargrove, Prescott explained, taking the seat beside her. They had some matters to discuss at the base. The chief asked if you needed a ride home. I'm fine, Wren replied automatically. Then, after a pause, is my dad in trouble? No, Prescott assured her. Quite the opposite. We made a mistake this morning, a serious one. Your father is owed an apology from all of us. Wren studied the officer's face, searching for sincerity. Whatever she found seemed to satisfy her, because some of the tension left her shoulders. He never talks about it, she said quietly. Whatever he did before. Sometimes I ask, but he just says it was a different life. Prescott nodded, understanding more than the girl realized. Some experiences are hard to translate for people who weren't there. But that Admiral knew him, recognized him. Yes. Wren's gaze dropped to her phone, where the video of her father's vindication played silently. Everyone's talking about him now, sharing these videos, speculating. A note of protective fierceness entered her voice. He's going to hate that. Prescott felt a sudden surge of admiration for this teenager who understood her father well enough to worry not about his reputation being damaged, but about his privacy being invaded by well-meaning strangers. Would you like me to take you home? She offered again. I can wait with you until your father returns. Wren considered this, then nodded. Okay. As they left the station, neither noticed Sergeant Lachlan watching them from his desk. An unfamiliar emotion etched across his features. Not just regret, but something deeper. The kind of shame that fundamentally alters a person's self-perception. At EIS, a naval station Port Harmon, Thorne stood in a secure briefing room surrounded by intelligence officers and communication specialists. The Admiral had assembled a rapid response team to analyze the mysterious signal, each member carefully selected for both expertise and security clearance. On the main screen, the intercepted code fragments glowed in eerie blue light. If we assume this is from a surviving member of Phantom Unit, a gray-haired intelligence analyst suggested, the question becomes which one, and why now after all these years? Thorne studied the pattern sequences, seeing beyond the code to the personality embedded within it. "It's Valen," he said with quiet certainty. The room fell silent. "Lieutenant Julian Valen was confirmed KIA," the Admiral said carefully. "Sevastopol operation, 2013. "We never recovered a body," Thorne reminded him. "Standard protocol was to declare any compromised operator dead, whether we had confirmation or not." "You think he was captured?" Thorne's expression darkened. "I think it's complicated. These code modifications, they're elegant, efficient, Valen style, but there's something else here." His finger traced a particular sequence on the screen. "This segment is completely new. It's not just a message, it's a warning." "Of what?" "That's what I need to find out." Thorne straightened. "I need secure communications and access to the Umbra archives." The Admiral hesitated only briefly. "Authorized, Commander Ellis will assist you." As the room cleared, leaving only Thorne, the Admiral, and Commander Ellis, an uncomfortable silence descended. The implications of a possibly compromised Phantom operator were too severe to voice aloud in a room that, despite its security, was still part of a larger system vulnerable to human error. "If Valen is alive," the Admiral finally said, "and if he's working from inside Russian intelligence, then Operation Blackfish was compromised from the beginning," Thorne finished, "and everything we built on that foundation is suspect." Ellis glanced between them, clearance level high enough to know the code name but not the details. "How far does Blackfish reach?" "All the way to the top," the Admiral replied grimly. "Current strategic positioning in the Baltic, Black Sea contingencies, personnel deployments throughout Eastern Europe." Thorne's expression remained neutral, but a muscle twitched along his jaw. "I need to make a call." "To whom?" the Admiral asked. "My daughter. If I'm stepping back into this world, even temporarily, she needs to know I might be late." The Admiral nodded, recognizing both the practicality and the humanity in the request. "Use my office. Secure line." Alone in the Admiral's office, Thorne dialed his home number, mentally constructing what he could and couldn't say. When Wren answered, her voice carried immediate relief. "Dad, where are you?" "Still at the base," he replied. "Some paperwork to sort out. I might be a few more hours." Pause. "The police told me what happened. Not details, just that you were wrongfully detained. Officer Prescott drove me home." Thorne absorbed this. "You okay?" "I'm fine. But Dad, people are talking, online, about you, about Phantom Unit." Thorne closed his eyes briefly, the only outward sign of the complications this created. "Don't engage with any of it," he instructed. "Don't confirm or deny anything." "I won't, but what is Phantom Unit? The videos are being shared everywhere." "It was classified work, Wren. That's all I can say." Another pause, longer this time. "Are you coming home tonight?" The question carried layers, not just about his physical return, but about whether the day's events would fundamentally alter their carefully constructed life. "Yes," he promised. "We'll talk then." After hanging up, Thorne remained motionless for several seconds, mentally transitioning between his roles: father and operator, present and past. The compartmentalization that once came so naturally now required conscious effort. A knock at the door preceded Commander Ellis's entry. "We've compiled the Blackfish files you requested, and there's something else you should see." She led him back to the secure terminal, where a new data set appeared: satellite imagery of a remote facility on Russia's northern coast. "This was taken 18 hours ago," she explained. "It's a naval intelligence outpost outside Murmansk, normally low activity, minimal personnel. But look at this." She highlighted a section showing increased vehicle movement, new security positions. "They're preparing to move something," Thorne observed. "Or someone." "Exactly. And the timing, right after those code fragments were transmitted, is not coincidental. Thorne studied the imagery with professional detachment. If Valen is there, this suggests he's either being transferred or has initiated some kind of protocol. Could he be defecting? The Admiral asked, joining them. Possibly, but after all this time? Thorne shook his head slightly. There's a piece missing. As they continued analyzing the intelligence, a junior officer entered with a secure tablet. Admiral, I think you need to see this. The Admiral took the tablet, his expression darkening as he viewed its contents. Without a word, he handed it to Thorne. On the screen was a news website displaying the gas station footage of Thorne's arrest, alongside the later video of the Admiral's salute. The headline read, Ghost Warrior, Navy SEAL imposter revealed as secret operative. Beneath it, in smaller text, sources claim connection to mythical Phantom Unit. Program so classified, even Pentagon denies existence. Thorne's expression remained unchanged, but the Admiral recognized the minute shift in his posture, the coiling of potential energy that preceded action in men trained for crisis. This complicates things, Thorne said simply. Understatement of the decade, Chief. The Admiral turned to his staff. I want a full damage assessment. How far has this spread? Who's commenting? Any official channels compromised? As the team dispersed to their tasks, the Admiral drew Thorne aside. Your cover is blown, whether we like it or not. This changes the operational parameters. Thorne nodded once. It also confirms something. If Valen is alive and monitoring, he now knows I received his message. You think this was part of the plan? Force you into the open? It's what I would have done. Thorne's gaze was distant, recalling training scenarios and operational planning from another lifetime. Create a situation that requires response, then watch the ripples. We need to get ahead of this, the Admiral decided. Ellis, prepare a statement. Minimal confirmation, maximum ambiguity. Acknowledge Chief Reese's service without specifics. Standard, neither confirm nor deny, regarding any unit designations. Ellis nodded, already mentally drafting the carefully worded non-answers that constituted most military press releases. And Thorne, the Admiral continued, we need to decide what happens next. If Valen is reaching out after all these years, it's not for a reunion. No. Thorne's voice carried the weight of someone confronting ghosts he'd believed long buried. It's because something is coming that only we would recognize. At the Reese home on Mariner's Way, Wren moved restlessly through the modest rooms, alternating between checking her phone for updates and staring out the window for her father's return. Officer Prescott had left after ensuring Wren was safely home, but not before providing her direct number, just in case. The house felt different somehow, as though the day's revelations had changed the very air within it. Wren found herself noticing details previously taken for granted. The precise alignment of furniture, the absence of unnecessary objects, the strategic positioning of windows and doors always in line of sight from preferred seating positions. Not the random habits of a working-class single dad, she now realized, but the ingrained patterns of someone trained to maintain awareness and control of his environment at all times. In her father's bedroom, a space she rarely entered out of teenage respect for boundaries, Wren stood uncertainly before the locked drawer in his bedside table, the drawer that had always been off-limits without explanation. She didn't try to open it. Whatever secrets it contained felt less important now than the larger question forming in her mind. Who was the man who had raised her? Not just what he had done in his classified past, but who he had been before becoming the quiet, steadfast father she knew. Her phone chimed with a news alert. Another article about her father had appeared, this one featuring a grainy photograph that appeared to be from years earlier. Thorne in partial uniform, face partly obscured but recognizable, standing with other operators whose faces had been digitally blurred. The caption read, Phantom Unit, the Navy's secret weapon that never officially existed. Wren closed the alert without reading further, a strange protective instinct rising within her. Her father had kept these secrets for a reason. It felt wrong to learn them from strangers speculating online rather than from him directly. Outside, the distinctive sound of an approaching vehicle drew her attention. Not her father's familiar truck, but something heavier, more deliberate. Wren moved to the window, watching as a dark SUV with government plates pulled into their driveway. A man in civilian clothes emerged, not her father, but someone with the unmistakable bearing of military personnel. He approached the house with purposeful strides, scanning the surroundings in a manner Wren suddenly recognized as similar to her father's habitual awareness. The doorbell rang, its ordinary sound incongruous with the tension of the moment. Wren hesitated, recalling her father's standing instruction never to open the door to strangers when home alone. But after today's events, the definition of stranger seemed to have shifted. "Wren Reese?" the man asked when she opened the door. "I'm Commander Elliot. I work with your father. May I come in?" His identification looked official, but Wren remained in the doorway. "My dad isn't here. I know. He sent me to retrieve something from his personal effects. With your permission." Wren's skepticism must have shown on her face, because the commander smiled slightly. "Your father said you'd be cautious. He told me to tell you, perimeter secure, blackbird nesting. Said you'd know what that means." The phrase, their private code from years earlier, established for emergencies when Thorne might need to send someone in his place, confirmed the commander's legitimacy. "What does he need?" she asked, stepping aside to allow entry. "He didn't specify, just said it's in a locked drawer in his room and that you know which one." Wren led the commander to her father's bedroom, pointing to the bedside table. "That drawer, but it's locked, and I don't have the key." Commander Elliot produced a small toolkit from his pocket. "Your father anticipated that." With practiced efficiency, he bypassed the lock rather than forcing it, revealing the drawer's contents. A small metal case, weatherproofed and secured with both key and combination locks. "This is it," he confirmed, lifting the case carefully. "Your father will explain everything when he gets home. In the meantime, is there somewhere you can go? A friend's house, perhaps?" Alarm flickered across Wren's face. "Why? Is something wrong?" "Just a precaution," the commander assured her, his tone deliberately casual. "Standard protocol when certain files are reactivated." "What files? What's going on?" Commander Elliot's expression softened slightly. "Your father is a very important man, Wren. More important than even he realizes sometimes. What's happening now is complex, but he's handling it. The best thing you can do is follow his instructions and trust that he knows what he's doing." After the commander departed with the mysterious case, Wren stood in the empty house, feeling the foundations of her world continuing to shift beneath her feet. Whatever was in that case, whatever her father had kept locked away all these years, was significant enough to send a military officer to retrieve it personally. Her phone chimed again, this time a text message from her father. "Stay at Eliza's tonight. Pack overnight bag. Will explain tomorrow. Love you." Eliza was her best friend, whose mother had been Wren's emergency contact since elementary school. The fact that her father was activating this long-standing contingency plan sent a chill through Wren that had nothing to do with the October air. She packed quickly, muscle memory from the periodic readiness drills her father had always framed as preparation for natural disasters. Only now did she recognize them for what they likely were: evacuation protocols disguised as ordinary precautions. As she zipped her duffel bag, Wren's phone chimed a third time. Not a text or news alert, but a notification from the home security system her father had installed years earlier. Front motion sensor activated. Moving to the window with instinctive caution, Wren peered through the blinds to see a police cruiser pulling into their driveway. Officer Prescott emerged, approaching the house with purposeful strides. Wren opened the door before she could knock. "Officer Prescott?" "Wren, is your father home yet?" "No. Why?" Prescott's expression was professional but concerned. "We've been trying to reach him. There's a situation developing at the station." "What kind of situation?" "Someone's been asking questions about your father, a man with a Russian accent claiming to be a journalist. He had details that weren't public, specific questions about Phantom Unit and something called Operation Blackfish." Wren's breath caught. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. Chief Rain ordered him off the premises." Prescott hesitated. "But he knew your address, Wren. Said he was heading here next for an exclusive interview with the daughter of Phantom 5. Phantom 5. The nickname sent a jolt through Wren, not because she recognized it, but because of the immediate visceral certainty that it referred to her father, the fifth member of a unit where only 4 men made it home. "I need to go," she said, shouldering her duffel bag. "My dad already told me to stay at a friend's tonight." Officer Prescott nodded, relief evident in her posture. "I'll drive you. And Wren, don't talk to anyone about your father, not friends, not on social media, not until this dies down." As they drove away from the house, Wren glanced back at the only home she'd ever known, suddenly seeing it through new eyes, not just as the modest residence of a hard-working single dad, but as the carefully maintained cover of a man whose true identity had remained hidden for years, until today. At the naval base, Thorne and the Admiral stood in a secure communication room, watching as intelligence analysts compiled and correlated data from multiple sources. The atmosphere had shifted from investigative to operational, the familiar rhythm of mission preparation that Thorne had once known as intimately as his own heartbeat. Valen's message contained coordinates, Thorne explained, pointing to a segment of code on the main display. Encoded in a pattern only Phantom operators would recognize. They point to a location in international waters, 50 miles northwest of Svalbard. Middle of nowhere, the Admiral observed. No commercial shipping lanes, no monitoring stations. Perfect for an exchange, Thorne agreed, or an extraction. Commander Ellis entered, her expression grim. Sir, we have a situation. Local police report a man identifying himself as a Russian journalist was at their station asking about Chief Reese and Operation Blackfish. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. How is that possible? The Admiral demanded. Blackfish was compartmentalized to the highest level. It gets worse, Ellis continued. He specifically asked about Phantom 5 and mentioned the name Julian Valen. Thorne's expression remained neutral, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes, a glimpse of the operator beneath the civilian facade. He's forcing our hand, Thorne said quietly. Valen, he's creating a situation where we have no choice but to respond. The Admiral turned to Ellis. Where is this journalist now? Gone, left the police station about 20 minutes ago. Said he was headed to interview Chief Reese's daughter. For the first time since his detention that morning, Thorne's composed exterior cracked, a flash of cold fury that transformed his features into something the room's other occupants instinctively recognized as lethal. My daughter is not part of this, he stated, each word precise and final. I've already dispatched security to your residence, the Admiral assured him, and Commander Elliott retrieved the package as requested. Thorne nodded once, the momentary break in his composure sealed over with professional control. We need to move now. Whatever Valen is planning, he's accelerated the timeline. What exactly do you think he's planning, Chief? Ellis asked. Thorne turned to the display showing the Russian naval facility near Murmansk, its increased activity now taking on new significance. Something valuable enough to risk exposing himself after all these years. Something worth compromising everything and everyone he once protected. Including you, the Admiral added quietly. Including me. Thorne's gaze was distant, seeing beyond the present moment to potential scenarios unfolding with the inevitable precision of a chess game whose opening moves were set in motion years earlier. We trained for this, you. No, Phantom protocols included contingencies for exposure, for compromise, for survival at any cost. What are you saying, Chief? Thorne turned to face the Admiral directly. I'm saying that Julian Valen isn't just reaching out. He's activated a ghost protocol, Phantom Unit's final contingency, the one we created for when everything else failed. And what does that protocol dictate? The Admiral asked, though his expression suggested he already knew the answer. Scorched earth, Thorne replied simply. Burn it all down and start again. On a desk near the main display, a secure phone rang with sudden, jarring urgency. Commander Ellis answered, listened briefly, then extended it toward Thorne with an expression that sent a ripple of tension through the room. It's for you, Chief. Caller identified himself as Phantom 3. The designation hung in the air. Phantom 3, when Valen had been Phantom 2, and Thorne himself was Phantom 5. Another ghost from the past. Another operator long presumed dead. Thorne took the phone, his movements deliberate, controlled. Authenticate, he demanded, his voice shifting subtly into a cadence and tone that belonged to his operator past. The voice that replied was distorted by encryption, but carried the unmistakable rhythm of the authentication response only a genuine team member would know. Obsidian Sunrise, Pattern Echo, Verification, Tango 79 Alpha. Thorne's expression remained unreadable, but his knuckles whitened slightly around the phone. Confirmed 3, status report. Compromise complete, the voice replied. Blackfish protocols activated, primary target in motion, Extraction window 48 hours at provided coordinates. Understood. Phantom 5, clear. As Thorne set the phone down, the room remained absolutely still, every person present aware they had witnessed something few ever would. Direct communication between operatives of a unit that officially never existed. That was Caney, Thorne said quietly. Marcus Caney, Phantom 3. Caney died in Odessa, the Admiral stated. 2014. I read the report myself. Apparently not. Thorne turned to the digital map on the main display. We have 48 hours to reach these coordinates. Valen is bringing out something significant enough to blow his cover after all these years. Something related to Blackfish. And Caney is helping him, Ellis concluded, which means whatever this is, it's big enough to resurrect Phantom Unit from the dead. The Admiral studied Thorne's face, reading beneath the professional mask to the calculations running behind it. What are you not telling us, Chief? Thorne met his gaze directly. Blackfish wasn't just an intelligence operation, sir. It was an insurance policy. We placed deep cover assets with fail-safe protocols. Information so sensitive it could destabilize entire security structures if exposed. What kind of information? The kind that explains why Russia has seemed one step ahead of NATO, positioning for the past decade. The kind that identifies assets so highly placed, their exposure would reshape geopolitical alliances overnight. Thorne's voice remained steady, but carried the weight of someone who had carried this knowledge alone for years. The kind worth killing for, worth dying for, worth staying dead for. The implications settled over the room like a physical weight. And now, the Admiral asked, now Valen is bringing it all to the surface. Thorne checked his watch, the same automatic gesture from the gas station hours earlier, but now carrying entirely different significance. We have less than 48 hours to meet him at those coordinates. If we don't, whatever he's planning happens without us. Or because of us, the Admiral added grimly. If this exposure was deliberate, if he wanted you identified publicly, then everything that happens next was already part of the plan, Thorne finished, including this conversation. As the operational planning accelerated around them, Thorne stood momentarily apart, mentally transitioning from the civilian identity he'd maintained for 12 years back into the operator he'd once been. The man who had executed missions that altered world events without leaving fingerprints. The man known only as Phantom 5. On the wall-mounted television tuned to a news channel, closed captioning scrolled beneath footage of the gas station incident and its aftermath. Developing, Navy SEAL imposter. Revealed as classified operative. Pentagon refuses comment on Phantom Unit allegations. Thorne watched the silent footage of himself being handcuffed, the ordinary moment that had triggered an extraordinary cascade of events. In the cold clarity of operational mindset, he recognized what perhaps even Valen could not have anticipated, that in attempting to force Thorne back into the game, he had unwittingly provided the perfect cover for what would come next. No one would question why a man wrongfully arrested and publicly vindicated might disappear for a few days. No one would connect the quiet mechanic and dock worker to international developments half a world away. The perfect cover, arising from the very exposure meant to compromise it. I need to make arrangements for my daughter, Thorne said, his decision made. And then I need equipment, credentials, and transport to those coordinates. The Admiral nodded once, understanding everything the simple request entailed. Consider it done. As planning for the mission intensified around him, Thorne's phone vibrated with a text message from Wren. Safe at Eliza's. Officer Prescott drove me. Dad, what's happening? He stared at the screen, the two halves of his life colliding in 16 simple words. The answer was too complex, too dangerous to share, even if operational security permitted it. Instead, he typed, "Everything will be fine. Back soon. Remember what I taught you. Love you." The message sent, Thorne slipped the phone into his pocket and turned back to the mission planning, his expression settling into the focused intensity of a man stepping fully back into a world he'd left behind. A world of shadows and secrets where the stakes were measured not in personal risk, but in global stability. Behind him on the screen, the coordinates pulsed steadily, a digital beacon summoning ghosts back to life. If you've ever discovered someone in your life had hidden depths you never suspected, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. How did finding out change your relationship with them? Sometimes the quietest people around us carry the most extraordinary stories within them. Subscribe to hear more tales of unexpected heroes hiding in plain sight. Dawn broke over the Arctic waters in a thin band of pale gold, the sun barely cresting the horizon before beginning its shallow arc across the sky. The naval vessel cutting through the dark waters moved with deliberate stealth, its running lights dimmed, communications restricted to essential transmissions only. On the bridge, Thorn Reese stood with the ship's captain and Admiral Hargrove, watching the coordinates on the navigation display draw steadily closer. 20 minutes to target location, the captain reported. Sonar shows no other vessels within 50 nautical miles. Thorn nodded, eyes fixed on the featureless horizon. He had shed his civilian clothes for tactical gear that fit with uncomfortable familiarity, like a skin he'd once inhabited and never expected to wear again. The weight of the sidearm at his hip, the communications equipment, the specialized gear secured in waterproof containers, all of it part of a life he'd left behind 12 years earlier. Still no radio contact? The Admiral asked. Nothing on any frequency, the communications officer confirmed. If someone's out there, they're maintaining complete silence. Thorn checked his watch, a different one now, military issue with multiple functions beyond telling time. They'll be there, he said with quiet certainty. Phantom protocols were specific about rendezvous procedures. The Admiral studied Thorn's profile, noting the transformation that had occurred over the past 24 hours. The dock worker and mechanic had receded, replaced by the operator who had once led missions that altered the course of international relations without leaving evidence of American involvement. Your team, the Admiral said quietly, they were the best we ever fielded. 5 operators who accomplished what would normally require entire SEAL teams. We had advantages, Thorn replied, his voice neutral. Specialized training, experimental protocols. And now 2 of them have resurfaced after being presumed dead for years. The Admiral's tone carried both respect and concern. Whatever Valen and Caney are bringing to the surface must be significant. It is. Thorn turned to face him directly. Operation Blackfish wasn't just about intelligence gathering, sir. It was about placing insurance, leverage so powerful it could prevent certain scenarios from ever unfolding. What kind of insurance? The kind that keeps nuclear options off the table. Thorn's expression remained impassive, but his eyes conveyed the gravity of his words. When we created the protocols, we built in fail-safes. If certain strategic thresholds were crossed, the insurance policy would activate automatically. Understanding dawned in the Admiral's eyes. You're saying Phantom Unit placed some kind of dead man's switch within Russian strategic systems? Not just Russian, several nations, including some nominal allies. Thorn turned back to the horizon. The details were compartmentalized. Each operator knew only their piece of the puzzle. And now those pieces are converging here, the Admiral concluded. Why now, after all these years? Before Thorn could answer, the communications officer called out, "Sir, we're picking up something. Faint signal, encrypted frequency." Thorn moved swiftly to the console, taking the offered headset. The transmission was barely audible, bursts of static punctuated by fragments of code that would sound like nonsense to anyone without Phantom Unit training. It's them, he confirmed, bearing 045, approximately 2 nautical miles. The captain adjusted course immediately, the ship's powerful engines surging beneath their feet. On the horizon, a small dot appeared, gradually resolving into the silhouette of a vessel, civilian design, medium-sized fishing trawler, the kind common in these waters. No flags, no identifying markings, the tactical officer reported, studying the vessel through high-powered binoculars. 2 heat signatures on deck, 3 more below. Thorn processed this information with practiced efficiency. Caney and Valen on deck, support personnel below. He turned to the Admiral. I need to go aboard alone. Absolutely not, the Admiral countered. Standard protocol requires... This isn't standard, sir. Thorn's voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had made similar judgment calls in far more hostile environments. Phantom operators were trained for specific contingencies, including compromise reunification. They'll only trust what they can verify personally. The Admiral held Thorn's gaze for a long moment, then nodded once. Tactical team on standby. First sign of trouble, they deploy. Understood. As the naval vessel drew alongside the trawler, the contrast between the two ships was stark. Military precision beside weather-beaten utility. On the trawler's deck, two figures stood waiting. Even at a distance, Thorne recognized them immediately. Not by their faces, obscured by cold weather gear, but by their posture, the way they positioned themselves on the deck, the subtle hand signals exchanged between them. Phantom 2 and Phantom 3. Valen and Caney. Men he had trained with, fought, alongside, and ultimately believed had died, in service of missions too classified to acknowledge. The boarding procedure was executed with minimal communication. A rigid ladder extended between vessels, secured on both sides. Thorne crossed alone, each movement precise and controlled despite the heaving seas beneath. As his boots touched the trawler's deck, the two men approached. "Authentication?" the taller one asked, voice muffled by his face, covering but unmistakably Valen's. "Phantom 5, Operational Directive Sierra November 9-7, Thorne responded. The code was one they had established years earlier for precisely this scenario, reunion after presumed loss. The second man, Caney, stepped forward and extended a small device. "Biometric confirmation." Thorne placed his thumb on the scanner without hesitation. After a brief moment, the device emitted a soft tone of confirmation. "It's him," Caney confirmed, his voice carrying a hint of something like relief. "Welcome back from the dead, 5. "Ironic, coming from you," Thorne replied, his tone neutral but with an undercurrent of tension. "Both of you were confirmed KIA." "Not the first time intelligence was wrong," Valen said, removing his face covering to reveal features harder and more weathered than Thorne remembered, but unmistakably the same man. A thin scar ran from his left temple to his jawline, new since Thorne had last seen him, or deliberately falsified. "We need to talk," Thorne said simply. Valen nodded toward a hatch leading below deck. "Secure compartment, no electronic surveillance." As they descended into the trawler's hold, Thorne maintained tactical awareness, mapping exits, noting potential weapons, assessing the 3 support personnel who maintained careful distance. Not hostility, but professional caution. The secure compartment proved to be a small cabin, retrofitted with countermeasure equipment. Signal jammers, white noise generators, and other specialized gear designed to prevent surveillance. Once inside, with the door sealed, Valen activated the security protocols. "Clear," he announced after the system cycled through their verification sequence. For a moment, the 3 men simply regarded one another, ghosts reunited after years presumed lost. Then Caney broke the silence with a short, humorless laugh. "Never thought we'd actually need the resurrection protocols," he said. "Figured they were just another one of Walsh's paranoid contingencies." Colonel Walsh, their handler, the architect of Phantom Unit. Dead now for real, heart attack in his Pentagon office 3 years earlier. "Why now?" Thorne asked directly. "After all these years, why surface?" Valen and Caney exchanged a glance that spoke of a shared understanding developed during their years off the grid. "Because the insurance policy is about to pay out," Valen said. "Blackfish has been compromised at the highest level." Thorne absorbed this, mind working through the implications with cold precision. "How?" "We've been tracking unusual access patterns in the systems we established," Caney explained, activating a small projector that displayed data flows and security breaches across multiple networks. "Someone's been probing the dead drops, trying to locate the failsafe protocols." "Russians?" "That's what we thought initially," Valen said. "But the access signatures don't match known FSB or GRU methodologies. This is someone else, someone with intimate knowledge of how Phantom established the original networks." "Someone from our side," Thorne concluded. "Exactly." Valen's expression hardened. "Someone who knows enough to be dangerous, but not enough to understand what they're about to trigger." Caney brought up another display, a timeline showing escalating breach attempts over the past 6 months, culminating in a significant spike 3 days earlier. "Whatever they're planning, it's imminent. That's why we activated the emergence protocols. That's why we needed you." "Why me specifically?" Thorne asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Because you're the only one who knows the master deactivation sequence," Valen said simply. "Walsh made sure each of us held different pieces of the puzzle. You got the kill switch." The weight of this responsibility settled over Thorne. knowledge he'd carried for years without fully understanding its potential importance. The fail-safe mechanism had been designed as a last resort, a way to prevent catastrophic escalation if certain strategic thresholds were crossed. "I need to know everything," Thorne said. "From the beginning, how you survived, what you've been doing, what you know about who's accessing the systems." Over the next hour, in the secure confines of the trawler's cabin, Valen and Caney laid out their story. After separate missions had gone wrong, Valen in Sevastopol, Caney in Odessa, both had activated deep cover protocols rather than risk compromise. Operating independently at first, they had eventually reconnected through the backup channels established during their Phantom training. "We've been monitoring the Blackfish networks from inside," Valen explained. "I was positioned within Russian naval intelligence, Caney within Eastern European defense contracting. We've had eyes on the systems without anyone realizing the significance of what they were protecting. Until someone started looking specifically for Phantom unit signatures," Caney added. "That's when we knew it wasn't random. Someone was hunting for our failsafes deliberately." "And you think it's someone from our side," Thorne said. "American intelligence." "Not just intelligence," Valen corrected. "Someone with knowledge of the original Phantom directives. Someone who was there when the unit was conceived." A cold certainty formed in Thorne's mind. Holloway. Valen's expression confirmed it, without words. General Malcolm Holloway, once Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence, now Assistant Secretary of Defense. One of the few people with knowledge of Phantom Unit's true purpose. "We intercepted communications between Holloway and a Russian defense contractor with known ties to hardline military factions," Caney explained. "They're planning something that would trigger the Blackfish protocols automatically. And you need me to deactivate them before that happens," Thorne concluded. "Yes, but there's more." Valen retrieved a small, heavily encrypted drive from a concealed compartment. This contains evidence of Holloway's communications, financial transfers, meeting transcripts, enough to prove he's been working with elements inside Russia to engineer a crisis that would benefit both parties. "What kind of crisis?" "The kind that justifies massive military spending and strategic repositioning," Caney said grimly. "The kind that makes careers and fortunes in defense contracting." "But they don't know about the fail-safes," Thorne realized. "They don't understand that triggering those conditions would activate countermeasures that could expose decades of covert operations." "Exactly." Valen's expression was deadly serious. "If the Blackfish protocols activate automatically, they'll release information that could compromise deep cover assets throughout Eastern Europe and Asia. People would die, Thorne, and the geopolitical fallout would be incalculable." The three men fell silent, the magnitude of the situation hanging heavy in the air. After a moment, Thorne spoke. "The deactivation sequence is only half the equation," he said. "To fully neutralize the protocols, we need biometric confirmation from at least 3 Phantom operators. That was built into the system as a safeguard." "Which is why we needed you," Caney confirmed. "The 3 of us together can prevent the automatic triggering of the protocols while still preserving the evidence against Holloway." "And then what?" Thorne asked. "We've been ghosts for years. Valen, you've been operating inside Russian intelligence. Caney, you've been off the grid entirely. And I've been a dock worker in Port Harmon. Who's going to believe us over an Assistant Secretary of Defense?" Valen and Caney exchanged another glance. "That's where your Admiral comes in," Valen said. "Hargrove has the credibility and position to take this evidence through proper channels. With his backing and the 3 of us providing testimony, it would be enough." Thorne considered this, mentally calculating risks, contingencies, probabilities, the same operational thinking that had once been as natural as breathing. "There's something you're not telling me," he finally said, reading the subtle tension in his former teammate's posture. After a moment, Caney nodded. "The journalist in Port Harmon, the one asking questions about you and Phantom Unit." "What about him?" "He wasn't Russian," Valen said quietly. "He was American, working for Holloway." The implications registered, immediately. "They know I'm alive. They're monitoring me." "Yes, which means they likely know we've made contact." Valen's expression hardened. "We need to move quickly. Once Holloway realizes all 3 of us are in play, he'll accelerate whatever he's planning." "My daughter," Thorne said, the personal concern breaking through his operational focus. "If they're monitoring me, they know about Ren." "She's secure," Caney assured him. We've had eyes on her since the gas station incident. One of our support team is positioned near her friend's house. No unusual activity so far. Thorne nodded, a brief acknowledgement of gratitude that needed no verbalization between men who understood such concerns. What's our timeline? Based on the communications we've intercepted, whatever Holloway is planning is set to occur within the next 72 hours, Valen said. We need to implement the deactivation sequence and get the evidence to Hargrove before then. And if we're too late, neither man answered immediately. Finally, Caney spoke. Then we fall back to contingency planning. Selective leaks of the most damaging information to trusted journalists, enough to force investigation without compromising field assets. A mess either way, Thorne observed. But less of one if we move now, Valen replied. The decision formed in Thorne's mind with the clarity that had once made him Phantom Unit's most effective operator. Let's do it, the deactivation sequence, then direct to Hargrove with the evidence. As they prepared to implement the complex series of protocols required to neutralize the Blackfish failsafes, Thorne's thoughts turned briefly to the life he'd built in Port Harmon, the ordinary existence that had become genuine over time, not just a cover, but a chosen path. For 12 years, he had been simply Thorne Reese, father to Wren, worker of 3 jobs, neighbor who fixed lawnmowers and kept to himself. That life now seemed as distant as Phantom 5 once had. At the naval station in Port Harmon, Vice Admiral Hargrove stood before a secure video conference with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, his expression grave as he outlined what they knew so far. Confirmation came approximately 90 minutes ago, he reported. Chief Petty Officer Reese has made contact with 2 former Phantom Unit operators previously believed killed in action. They are implementing security protocols to neutralize a potential intelligence compromise at the highest levels. On the screen, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs leaned forward. What exactly are we talking about, Admiral? What is this Blackfish protocol mentioned in your preliminary report? Sir, the complete details remain compartmentalized, but my understanding is that Phantom Unit established failsafe measures as part of their deep cover operations in Eastern Europe and Asia. These measures were designed to prevent certain strategic scenarios from developing without detection. And you're telling me that Assistant Secretary Holloway is attempting to compromise these measures? The evidence suggests that, yes, sir. Chief Reese and his former teammates are securing that evidence now for proper investigation through appropriate channels. The Joint Chiefs exchanged glances, their concern evident even through the encrypted video feed. This is an explosive allegation, Admiral, the chairman finally said. Holloway has the president's ear. He's been driving our Eastern European strategy for the past 3 years. I understand the sensitivity, sir. That's why we're handling this through secure channels with maximum discretion. What's your assessment of Reese and these other operators? After all these years, are they reliable? The Admiral considered this carefully. Chief Reese has lived an exemplary life as a civilian for 12 years. No red flags, no concerning patterns. As for the others, they've been operating deep cover in hostile territory for years, without detection. Their discipline and commitment appear unchanged. And you trust their intelligence regarding Holloway? I trust they believe what they're reporting, sir. The evidence will need proper verification, of course. The chairman nodded. Keep this contained, Admiral. If these allegations prove accurate, we'll need to move carefully to prevent both strategic and public relations damage. If they're inaccurate, we need to understand why 3 highly trained former operators would make such claims. Understood, sir. As the conference ended, Commander Ellis entered with an update. Admiral, we're receiving real-time data from Chief Reese's team. They've begun implementing the deactivation protocols for the Blackfish failsafes. Estimated completion time? The process requires multiple verification steps, biometric confirmations, and synchronized code entries at different access points. Approximately 3 hours, sir. Ann Holloway, currently in Washington, scheduled to testify before the Senate Armed Services Committee this afternoon on Black Sea security initiatives. The Admiral absorbed this information, mentally calculating timelines and potential responses. Maintain secure communications with Reese's team. I want updates every 15 minutes. And Ellis? Sir? Prepare a secure transport for when they return. I want them brought directly to me. No intermediate stops, no exposure. Yes, sir. As Ellis departed, the Admiral turned his attention to the developing situation map displayed on his office wall. Markers indicated the position of Reese's team in the Arctic waters, Holloway and Washington, and other relevant assets positioned throughout the operational theater. The careful choreography of a high-stakes intelligence operation unfolding in real time. Except this one involved American operators working to prevent a potential conspiracy from within their own chain of command. In the waters northwest of Svalbard, the three Phantom operators worked in coordinated precision to implement the complex deactivation sequence for the Blackfish protocols. Each step required specific knowledge held by only one team member, ensuring that no single operator could control the system entirely. Primary access achieved, Caney reported, his fingers moving across specialized equipment with practiced efficiency. Biometric verification initiated. Valen and Thorne placed their hands on separate scanning panels, allowing the system to confirm their identities through multiple biometric markers beyond standard fingerprints. Subtle vascular patterns, specific callus formations from their training, even the precise pressure distribution unique to each operator. First firewall neutralized, Valen confirmed as the system accepted their input, moving to secondary protocols. The process continued with methodical precision, each layer of security requiring different combinations of knowledge and physical verification. What they were effectively doing was dismantling a dead man's switch designed to release damaging intelligence automatically if certain strategic conditions were met, conditions that Holloway was apparently preparing to trigger without understanding the consequences. 2 hours into the procedure, with the primary failsafes successfully neutralized, a secure communication came through from Admiral Hargrove. Situation update, his voice announced over the encrypted channel. Holloway has canceled his Senate testimony and left Washington unexpectedly, current whereabouts unknown. The three operators exchanged glances, the implications clear without needing verbalization. Holloway knew something was happening. Time to completion? Thorne asked. 45 minutes for full deactivation, Caney estimated. But we've neutralized the primary triggers. The secondary systems won't activate automatically now. We need to move, Valen decided. Get the evidence to Hargrove before Holloway can cover his tracks. Thorne nodded in agreement. Let's finish this. As they completed the final stages of the deactivation sequence, Thorne's thoughts returned to Port Harmon, to Wren, to the life he'd built that now hung in uncertain balance. Whatever happened next, there would be no returning to the quiet anonymity he'd maintained for 12 years. His identity was exposed, his history partly revealed. The carefully constructed walls between Phantom 5 and Thorne Reese had crumbled, and he now existed in an uncomfortable space between his past and what his future might become. At Eliza's house in Port Harmon, Wren sat by the window, watching the street with the unconscious vigilance she'd inherited from her father. Her phone displayed the latest news updates, more speculation about her father, about Phantom Unit, about classified operations that had supposedly shaped global events without leaving traces. Your dad's, famous now, Eliza commented, scrolling through social media on her own phone. There are all these theories about what he did. He's not famous, Wren replied quietly, and those people don't know anything about him. But is it true? Was he really some kind of super-secret operative? Wren didn't answer immediately. The truth was, she didn't know either, not really. She knew the father who helped with homework, who worked 3 jobs without complaint, who taught her to fish and change a tire and stand up for herself without raising her voice. Whatever he had been before, that was the man she knew. He's my dad, she finally said. That's what matters. Her phone chimed with a message from an unknown number. All secure, coming home tomorrow, love, Dad. The simple message carried profound relief. Whatever was happening, wherever he was safe and returning soon. The details could wait. Across town at the Port Harmon police station, Officer Prescott was completing paperwork on the Reese incident. Documentation required after the wrongful detention of a civilian who proved to be a former special operator. The formal apology had already been issued, but the procedural aftermath continued. Chief Rain entered, coffee mug in hand, as always. Any update from the Admiral's office? Nothing specific, Chief. Just confirmation that Mr. Reese is assisting with a sensitive matter and will be returning to Port Harmon within 24 hours. Rain nodded, her expression thoughtful. Quite a day, wasn't it? From arresting someone for stolen valor to discovering he was part of a classified unit, so secret most of the Pentagon doesn't know it exists. "Do you think he'll come back?" Prescott asked. "To his life here, I mean, after everything that's happened." The chief considered this. "Men like Reese don't choose quiet lives in small towns by accident, officer. Whatever he was before, this is what he chose to become. I suspect he'll find a way to preserve that, even now." The following morning, as dawn broke over Port Harmon in shades of amber and gold, a naval vehicle with tinted windows pulled up outside the modest house on Mariner's Way. Thorne Reese stepped out, still in tactical gear, but with his civilian jacket pulled over it, a visual bridge between his two worlds. Admiral Hargrove emerged from the passenger side. "You're sure about this? After everything we've learned, there would be a place for you back in service. Your expertise is invaluable." Thorne looked at his home, the worn porch steps he'd been meaning to repair, the carefully maintained yard, the window of Wren's room with its astronomy posters visible through the glass. "I made my choice 12 years ago, Admiral. I stand by it." The Admiral nodded, understanding without fully comprehending. "The evidence you provided is being processed through secure channels. Holloway has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The Joint Chiefs send their appreciation for your team's actions." Valen and Caney? Debriefing at a secure facility. There, situations are more complicated, given their deep cover positions, but they'll be treated with appropriate consideration for their service. Thorne accepted this with a nod. "And my situation? Officially, you remain Thorne Reese, civilian. Your service record has been updated to reflect honorable discharge after classified operations, but the details remain redacted at the highest level. The media speculation will eventually fade without official confirmation." "And unofficially?" The Admiral smiled slightly. "Unofficially, certain people in very secure rooms know that Phantom 5 prevented a potential intelligence catastrophe and exposed a conspiracy that could have altered the strategic balance in Eastern Europe. They're grateful, even if they can never say so publicly." Thorne extended his hand. "Thank you, Admiral." "No, Chief, thank you." The Admiral's handshake was firm, respectful, one professional to another. "If you ever decide you want back in, there's a place for you." "I know where I belong," Thorne replied simply. As the Admiral's vehicle departed, Thorne turned toward his house. Before he could reach the steps, the door flew open and Wren appeared, her expression a complex mixture of relief, confusion, and the particular brand of teenage indignation reserved for parents who cause worry. "Dad," she said, her voice carrying more emotion than the single word should be able to contain. "Hey, kid," he replied, the familiar greeting carrying its own weight of normalcy in abnormal circumstances. She crossed the distance between them and threw her arms around him in a rare display of physical affection. He returned the embrace, feeling the subtle tremor in her shoulders that revealed the fear she'd been hiding. "You okay?" he asked as they separated. "Are you?" she countered, studying his face with newfound awareness. Seeing him now, not just as her father, but as someone with depths she was only beginning to comprehend. "I am," he assured her. And somewhat surprisingly, he meant it. The past 48 hours had pulled him back into a world he'd left behind, forced him to revive skills and mindsets he'd deliberately set aside. But he'd done what was needed and returned to what mattered most. "Are you really a secret agent or whatever?" Wren asked as they walked toward the house. "Everyone's talking about it. There are videos and articles and theories everywhere." "I was many things before I was your dad," he replied carefully. "Some of those things are classified and will stay that way. But I'm not a secret agent, Wren. I'm just someone who did a job when my country needed it. And now I'm still your dad, still work at the harbor and the garage, still need to fix those porch steps." She studied him skeptically. "Just like that? After whatever happened the past 2 days, you're just going back to normal?" He smiled slightly. "Normal is what we make it. Some things might change, people looking at us differently for a while, some questions we can't answer, but what matters stays the same." As they entered the house together, Thorne noticed small details through the heightened awareness that had returned with his operational mindset. Wren had cleaned up, organized his tools that usually sat on the kitchen counter, even prepared coffee in anticipation of his return, small gestures of caring that spoke volumes. "I have questions," she said as they settled at the kitchen table, the morning light streaming through windows that faced the harbor in the distance. A lot of questions. I know, I'll answer what I can. But some of it's classified. Not a question, but an acceptance of reality. Yes, not just for national security, Ren. Some things stay classified to protect people still doing important work. She nodded, processing this. The Admiral who came to the police station, he said you were one of the finest warriors he'd ever known. Admiral Hargrove has a flair for the dramatic, Thorne replied dryly. But it was true, wasn't it? You did things, important things. He considered how to answer, balancing honesty with appropriate boundaries. I served with exceptional people. We did what was asked of us, sometimes in places where no one knew we were there. That's all. And now everyone knows, she observed. The videos, the speculation. How does that work with classified? It doesn't entirely. That's why there won't be official confirmation beyond acknowledging that I served honorably in classified capacities. The rest will remain speculation. But people will still look at you differently, she persisted. At us. For a while, he acknowledged. Then something else will capture attention, and will be yesterday's news. That's how it works. As they continued talking, Ren asking questions, Thorne answering those he could, and gently deflecting those he couldn't. A sense of normalcy gradually returned. Different now, altered by revelations that couldn't be undone, but still recognizably theirs. Later that day, Thorne drove to the harbor for his regular shift unloading fishing boats. Valencia, the harbor master, watched his arrival with poorly concealed curiosity, as did the other dock workers who had seen the videos and read the speculation. Didn't expect to see you today, she said as he signed in. Figured you might be busy with, well, everything. The fish don't unload themselves, Thorne replied simply. A smile spread across Valencia's weathered face. No, they don't. She handed him his work assignment with a nod of respect that asked no further questions. Throughout the day, Thorne felt the stares, heard the whispers, noticed the subtle changes in how people interacted with him. Some with newfound respect, others with curiosity. A few with the wariness reserved for those whose capabilities suddenly seem unknowable. But as hours passed, as he worked alongside men he'd known for years, the novelty began to fade. He was still Thorne, who never complained about the heaviest loads, who knew exactly how to secure the winch for maximum efficiency, who kept to himself but was always reliable. The past might have been momentarily illuminated, but the present remained anchored in the life he'd chosen. At the gas station where everything had begun just days earlier, Thorne pulled in to refuel his truck at the end of his shift. The same pump. The same worn jacket now, with the seal trident patch proudly visible on the sleeve. As he filled his tank, a police cruiser pulled in. Officer Prescott emerging with a hesitant smile. "Mr. Reese," she greeted him. "Good to see you back." "Officer," he acknowledged with a nod. "I wanted to apologize again, personally, for what happened. The assumptions we made were based on what you could see," he interrupted gently. "No apology needed." She studied him with new understanding. "Will you stay? In Port Harmon, I mean, after everything that's happened." Thorne looked around at the town he'd called home for 12 years, the harbor visible in the distance, the naval base beyond it, the modest streets where he'd raised his daughter and built a life deliberately separate from his past. "This is home," he said simply. As Officer Prescott departed with a respectful nod, Thorne finished refueling and drove toward Mariner's Way, where Ren would be waiting with more questions, more attempts to reconcile the father she knew with the operative she was learning about. There would be adjustments, accommodations to their new reality. But some things wouldn't change. The precision with which he maintained their home, the quiet strength that had nothing to prove, the promises kept to those who couldn't collect on them anymore, and the knowledge, private but profound, that sometimes the greatest acts of courage aren't the ones that make headlines or inspire speculation, but the quiet choice to build something lasting after the mission's end, to find meaning not in classified operations, but in ordinary moments of being simply, fully present. As Thorne pulled into his driveway, the setting sun caught the trident on his jacket sleeve, no longer a source of misunderstanding, but a bridge between the worlds he had inhabited. Not a claim to glory, but a reminder of promises kept and lessons learned. The quiet warrior had come home. Do you know someone who carries themselves with quiet dignity? never boasting about their achievements or seeking recognition. Those are often the people with the most remarkable stories behind their silence. Share your thoughts in the comments below about the unsung heroes in your own life, and subscribe to hear more stories about extraordinary strength hiding in ordinary moments.